To the cloud. Okay, welcome.
And do we want to put on the?
Yes, I do.
Yes. Okay. Just a little bit before we launch into the presentation. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here and give you a brief update on kind of development real estate happenings in La Quinta. How many of you either were at the Women Council Realtors or the CEDAR hybrid Zoom in person last week? And either of those? One. So you're going to hear it again.
Yeah.
So maybe you have new questions,
Yeah.
but just we're kind of going through the gamut here of the different groups, which is great. So a little bit repeat, but if there's anything again new that you didn't hear or anything I've added, feel free. I've done these updates before, and it's a great way to interact and continue to add things and preparation for tomorrow, which we're doing a spring business update at the Silver Rock Park. And this is a brief version of a formal state of the city that we normally would do at a hotel ballroom with the Chamber of Commerce. This is a Chamber of Commerce hosted as well. And basically it's 4:30 to 5:15 is registration, food and drinks for those chamber folks. And then, or anybody, paying to get into that stage area at Silver Rock Park. And then 5:15 to 5:45, we'll do a city update similar to this, adding some different topics, and the rest of the council will join in. And then basically it's going to be a free concert in the park, and it's the Refills, which is a local band here. Many of them live in La Quinta. So it's really open to the public. You can bring chairs and coolers and kind of hang out outside that little chamber area and just have a good time. So we'll do the more formal process later in the fall. We wanted to have a few other things kind of cooking before we launch that whole thing. And the route is just the busiest time. Everybody's trying to make up for lost events and charity functions and Coachella coming in and tennis leading. So just accessibility for space is a challenge. So we opted to just do a little bit more casual, fun, open to the public, more inclusive community park update. So with that, La Quinta, we'll be celebrating our 40th birthday. That's another reason for that lead in of the spring update is May 1st is our 40th anniversary of incorporation. Of course, we were Riverside County before, and two major things that residents in the area were passionate about are public safety, which is still one of the priorities here today, and regular trash pickup. So lo and behold, a group of Cove residents got together and pitched the county, ended up becoming incorporated in 1982. So 25 golf courses, 16 parks. We're really about recreation, health and wellness, and a lot of activity. And we are a contract city, which means that we contract police and fire and a lot of other services versus employ those like some of the other big cities here in this area. So even though we're still new, we've got a lot going on, and it's definitely a lot of build going on. And I think one of the first things that people always want to hear about is short-term vacation rentals. So I'll do an overview of that. And if there's questions at the end, I'd be happy to do that. What kind of time do I have? I just want to make sure.
Till about 10:15.
Perfect. Okay, I talk fast, as you know, if you've heard me before, so I'll get a lot in. If you say slow down, just raise your hands. But I'm thinking it's early, you want to keep up, and you can do that. Short-term vacation rentals. So the reality is really the majority of our council are very pro short-term vacation rentals. We've just had to listen and act based on massive feedback from some of our residents during the height of COVID and how a lot of those party houses kind of got out of control and how we had to put new enforcements in place. So we have not issued a new permit for any new short-term vacation rentals in kind of your Res 1, Res 2 areas since August 4th of 2020. That's almost 2 years, coming on 2 years. New permits are still allowed in areas that are zoned commercial, village commercial, that have a development agreement, entitlement agreements, et cetera, et cetera. And as we look at new developments and new projects coming to town, we're encouraging them to start out of the gate with a development agreement that they can be rentable if they choose to be. So those people buying into those properties will know. And that's one of the complaints that some of our local residents have, is saying, well, I didn't realize I was going to have 6 on my blog. I just thought they were people that I could share sugar and eggs with. So we're balancing that piece with maintaining the revenue source. We've seen a decline, and I'll go over that, of permits. We've seen a decline in complaints, and we're still looking at opportunities to maintain the density, maintain the permit fees and business license costs, et cetera, and still have money to cover those services. So again, permanent ban was put into effect on May 20th, even though the moratorium started in the height of the pandemic. And we can go to the next one. Existing permits can't be transferred upon change of ownership. There are situations where we have done development agreements. For example, the Polo Villas, which is over at Madison 52. That was that 11 very nice kind of modern homes that the Golden Voice people bought and built, and they recently sold that property. And so when you sell that property and they had rental permits, technically you can't transfer them to the owner. So being that they had another 7 lots to develop based on the new owners, that they came forward and said, we want to expand and develop those lots. So we incorporated the whole thing under development agreement, which by our ordinance and by design, we're able to do. We wouldn't necessarily do that for 3 or 4 streets in the cove, but it's an isolated area that's in a pocket of kind of festival land, was built as rentals and operated as rentals. You're not gonna have families playing soccer every day and going to school, living in those homes just because. So we wanted to keep that intact because of its position. And so those are one of the exceptions that we've allowed. So we've got some flexibility there. This is just an example of the total number of permits and how they've declined from January of 2001 to January 2022. So we clearly have seen a decline in permits citywide, and that's a lot of people selling their homes for top dollar, people just not renewing, people not wanting to hassle. There's a variety of reasons that they've declined. But by design, we wanted to see that decline to kind of settle things down a little bit and still be able to manage the process. We can go to the next one. But these are the areas, the North La Quinta, Mid La Quinta, which is really south of 111, but north of the Cove. Our Cove area itself, and then mostly everything in the South La Quinta area, with the exception of a couple areas, is all PGA West. This is really the decrease in density over the past year, and then how many permits overall that are in the city of La Quinta. So we still have the highest number and concentration in PGA West. Again, CCNRs allow it. That's how PGA West was developed. They were not able to manage that effectively in the height of a lot of travel and escape from being sheltered. And so they really came to us and said, can you help us out and try to do something to stop this madness? And so that was part of kind of our effort to slow things down at a moratorium. But nonetheless, there's still pockets that are grandfathered in those areas. There's a couple areas that they voted on as CCNR changes that will prevent anybody new getting them. But in the signature, which was going to be a hotel anyway, now commercial, that's actually one of those zoned areas that it'll still be allowed to get brand new permits in the signature PGA West. So just another sample of a density change. Again, density change in the band area. So we call the band areas those, well, let's go to the next one because it'll show. These are all the exempt areas of where we can still issue new permits and or anything new coming on board that might entertain new permits. So for example, the topic that I can't talk about is the Coral Mountain Wave Basin project that has a combination of hotel and homes and retail, and then the Kelly Slater Wave Basin, that they are asking for a development agreement that would include rental options. Silver Rock, of course, is already there, / Talus, but these are some of those areas that have availability to continue to issue permits. And complaints have massively declined, and it's really a combination of extra enforcement, extra rules, better monitoring processes through either noise aware or just our hotline calls. And this 85, really a lot of them are in unpermitted areas. We're still finding unpermitted permit holders. And that's through companies that we contract with that kind of scour the internet for those non-permitted properties. And then we log that as a complaint even internally so we can track that. And those are the ones that are getting fined. And if we ever release and allow new permits to start happening again, those would be banned for the length of time that that individual owns that property. So good progress here. Any questions on short-term vacation rentals? Yes.
So is there a map somewhere where we can get that information fully, like if we were to go onto the city of La Quinta to see which particular areas are zoned for?
Yes, yeah. So if you go to laquintaca.gov and you go into the short-term rentals, all of that complaint information, the density information, we're putting as much information as we can on there. And there's a color-coded map that will show you the green areas that allow it. Not necessarily prospective because they haven't gone through the process, but those, yes, they'll show you those areas. It's very easy to identify. And if you have any questions, you can just either ask me or call the city, and they're very in tune to that. Okay, some new residential build. There's exciting things going on in La Quinta, and permits have gone up finally over the last couple of years in comparison to COVID time. Go ahead and click forward. We're working on about 104 permits so far year to date, and that's really through end of March. A lot of active construction sites, and I'll provide you a list of where those are. Fortunately, we're seeing some activity now where the slowdown happened, and there's still supply chain issues, obviously still cost issues. We're doing our best. We've always been online. We went online after the last recession, so there was a lot we could do very quickly to adjust to remote. Our challenge has been, like a lot of other places, is sometimes staffing if there was an outbreak, or the business was so busy that we're trying to hire 2 more inspectors because there's just so much activity going on in La Quinta. We want to keep up and get that turnaround really quickly. So go ahead, next slide. These are some of the locations of active development and where build is going on, whether they're brand new, whether they're second phases, whether they're infill, like in the Cove. A lot of big homes. Most of these are really Madison Street East to Monroe. A lot of it is, not all of it. But Madison Street East to Monroe, that's actually still under the thermal redevelopment area under the county. So the city of La Quinta doesn't get any property tax from anything Madison Street East. So all of those big gated communities, all of that 25% of the property tax goes to the county, the rest goes to the state. We only get 7 cents on the dollar for other areas of La Quinta, and that's because we're a newer city and we were incorporated post Prop 13. So out of that 25 cents that is allowed from a county down, the county only said you get 7 of that. In those areas, we get 0 of that until their bonds that they refinance expire in 2033. So hopefully in 2033, we can go back to the county and say, we now at least want our 7 cents. They'll never increase that. They just won't do it. And then when you look at annexing any other areas that might be in our sphere of influence, or people say, can you annex Bermuda Dunes into La Quinta? You know, all these little pockets. The county says, sure, we'll go ahead and do a boundaries adjustment, but the county needs to stay revenue neutral. They'll continue to garner that property tax and sales tax from that designated areas. We'll give it to you for boundaries, and you maintain police, fire, infrastructure, amenities, et cetera. So not a real good business deal for us. So we haven't done any annexing for quite some time. Anyway, that's where the new construction's happening. Single family construction. These are some things that are on the horizon, just some added components to our kind of mostly southeast area. A lot of topic on Talus, which is Silver Rock. That's where the Montage and Pendry are going. What I thought I'd do is to let you know that right now, there was a lot of lull and stall and delay and finance issues with Robert Gray, our developer. That seems to be back on track, a few bumps here and there, but we have a new scheduled performance and a new amendment on the development agreement. And so I just want to give you some of the highlights of the process right now. This is actually the, it should say the Montage.
Oh, here, let me see if I can move that.
That should be the hotel. That's the entryway of the hotel. So if you've been to Silver Rock, yes, and that's really where the roundabout is, where you go to Amundsen Ranch House and maybe have breakfast or lunch or golf. That would be the grand entrance to the Montage Hotel. This is kind of a bar area with a tiny little bit of water, and then all the administrative services in the restaurant there. Go ahead and go to the next one. These are the cuts for the guest rooms of the Montage, and that's about 130 rooms. Those are very low profile kind of single bungalows that are sitting on 18. And so that's kind of underway with infrastructure, utilities, all of that. These are progress of about 3 of the 29. These are the furthest along of the branded residential. So if you're playing golf there and you see the temporary cart barn and you see that activity, that is the high-end homes that are also rentable. They'll have walk-off units similar to like the Laguna Montage. And these range from $4 to $10 million. And 11 of them are already sold or have deposits down, which is great. This is our shared services. So what they're doing between the Montage and Pendry is they'll have shared services for all of the front and back house, catering, ballroom space, all of that. So for efficiency reasons, they're putting that. And that really is right off the park. So if you enter across from Citrus and you see our park, which is city owned, and all of this other rebar that's sticking up, that's really where the shared services buildings will be. This is the clubhouse. Clubhouse is due to open by the end of this year. We really need to reroute kind of the road to have them continue construction. So we want to move that temporary over to the regular clubhouse and start functioning there as they continue that development. The Montage is due to open August of 2023. The Pendry hasn't started yet. It'll start after that. But good news is it's on track. No easy feat. Obviously, costs have gone up. But a lot of hype, and that really only takes up if you're driving around that area, driving south on Jefferson down to PJ West, and you still see a lot of dirt. That's really kind of a face of future phases. Most of this is kind of hugged around that mountain area. He's entitled to those other phases down the road, given that he performs and has the finances to develop different things. Questions on Talus, Montage, Silver Rock? Yeah.
Are they doing another golf course, or is just part of Silver Rock?
Yes, they'll be eventually taking over the golf course as part of Montage. They'll own that as well. All of the benefits that residents had as far as lower green fees, those have been made intact in covenants of the transfer. So there'll still be a third of the rounds that will be available to residents at reduced rates. But no, they have not planned yet additional. They were talking about maybe an extra 9 holes, but right now there's no golf plan.
Linda, is that I've noticed that there is no construction going on there. So you're saying they were off track and they're going to start construction again?
So they had, well, there's all of that stuff that you see has been happening.
Yeah, right.
And then there was a little bit of a lull. Well, there was a part of the financing came through an EB5 program. And apparently after 2 years, you've got to go through the House, Senate, and Congress and President to sign off on your 85 renewal. And that was happening in late March, early April. Early March, late March, early April, yeah, because it just got signed about a week ago Friday. So that released millions of dollars again to renew that. You won't have to do that renewal again. So that was the shortfall of not paying contractors on time and having stuff wait. So there was a lull in that. So you should see a lot of activity again in the next week or so. Yes.
Is there still a roundabout planned across from the highway?
Yes, yeah, that's on my capital plan. But you're right, yeah, right across from the hideaway, which is going to be really the main entrance to the Montage. They'll still have the one off Silver Rock Way by the Citrus. That will be another roundabout, not as big as the Roadrunner, but a smaller roundabout. And there's some lane modifications that will be going down to PJ West. Yeah, that's going to start in May. We wanted to wait until after tennis, golf, the festivals before we launch that and kind of get it done through summer. Yeah. Okay, commercial and business update. What have we got in here?
She has one more question.
Oh, yes, please. Oh, sorry.
What are the prices?
The prices of the homes are like $4 to $10 million for those 29 luxury. There's also going to be condominiums. Pendry's going to have condominiums, and those are, I think, are the last I heard was between $600,000 and $900,000 for the condos, and then there might be some other future residential. They haven't started any of that yet.
Please don't give that to some of us to make it over build up restaurant. I don't think they'll get it, so they're looking for new development. So
Oh, okay, let's talk. Okay, sounds good. This is just some new things. The infamous Ralph Shopping Center that was down by Old Town across the street from City Hall that had been empty for so many years. It's got a grocery outlet in part of it. There's still going to be something else coming in the other half. That center's really been activated since the Starbucks drive-through went in, and multiple food operations have gone in there. We've got a Los Arcos Mexican restaurant, Thai, Chinese, there's a pizza place. So that's pretty good. This is a family, you know, the two sisters that are managing this grocery outlet, which is great. Nothing but cakes. Added a second location. They're right next to the movie theater and Bucatini's in that shopping center in Washington Plaza. That's another little, oh, this is the California Cafe. So if you've ever been to Chula Eatery, right over by Louisa's Pantry, the Catherine's place, she's taken over the Old Town, which is now Main Street Coffee. She's taken over the California Cafe, opened that up, and then she's got one more going into Old Town. So yeah, she's really, really engaged in the community and decided that she wanted to branch out and have some variety. So some great pastries and things there. A lot of business, a lot of activity going on in our building inspections. Again, you can look online under the business activity and see where projects are because everything's pretty well tracked. A lot of increases there, a lot of inspections performed, and we're just trying to say that we're open for business, we're pro-business, and we want to keep things moving as best we can. Pavilion Palms, this has been a slug of a project, to be honest with you. This is the market that's going to be on the corner of Jefferson and 50th, across from Indio's Ralph's and Indio's new Canopy. And this will include a gas station, some drive-throughs, some other small businesses, and then the big pavilions, which is kind of the Vaughn Safeway, Albertsons version of Bristol Farms-ish. Great store design, companies behind it. We just have developers that are a little bit slow in the uptake, and it took multiple times going back and forth through planning to get a good design and layout. And they're finalizing some design plans for the rest of the center. And hopefully we'll be submitting an application soon so we can actually get some sticks in the ground. That would be nice because so much of La Quinta is shopping in the Ralph Center. So new restaurants coming in there, and that you know, planned habit forming shopping pattern. We want to make sure that we're getting the tax dollars across the street. Next, finance update. Everyone wants to know about how the money's going. Go ahead and click forward. City's doing very well. We just like other cities, we thought there was going to be a pretty big significant downturn, knowing that hotels are going to be closing, you couldn't travel, people were stuck at home, because we rely on what little property tax we get, but sales tax and TOT, the hotel tax. And so we had projected a pretty big loss in 2020. We ended up having turned that around a little bit. One of the things that we did benefit from was the fact that people were staying home and remodeling and improving their homes. And when we passed our residents helped pass the Measure G 1% sales tax back in 2016, it was a sales use and destination tax. So even if you bought something outside of La Quinta, if it was delivered to a La Quinta address, your furniture, cars, etc., Amazon, we still got 1% of that, which is great. So what we thought was going to be a number for sales tax, say 6 or 8 million a year, ended up being 10 to 17 million a year, was over double that. So we've garnered a lot from that, and we still continue to recover. We did a lot of help during COVID for our small businesses. We allocated up to $2 million. We spent 1.8 of that to help our small businesses, and that was through an economic disaster reserve fund. We're fully funding our reserves, including our unfunded pension, and we're knock on wood ready for another disaster. And we're fortunate that it's pretty conservative that way from a financial standpoint, that when something is a downturn, we can invest and try to make things as whole as possible, or at least keep people working and rents paid, et cetera. So economic development wise, what's on the horizon? That's just a sample of Old Town. We still have our farmers markets on Sundays. Art on Main Street's happening on random Saturdays as well. And then the art celebration is now twice a year. So it's February, it's March, and it's November. So they'll always do it right before tennis, and then also during Veterans Weekend. This is just an example of Old Town. A lot of folks coming in. Obviously, hospitality and tourism is still a prime component. And that's where we have to find that balance between the fact that we are a hospitality driven community, valley-wide, 1 in 5 jobs, right, are hospitality driven services. And yet there's still a handful of folks that really just wanted to stay without change, without progress, and they want that balance. And believe me, I have a short-term rental right next to me. Knock on wood, I've never had any problems with them. They know who I am. We work together on things. I have to text them sometimes saying, take your trash in, you're gonna get a fine. And they do. So now they've got the backyard service. So, you know, you find a balance. And I think that there's always gonna be, there's good regular neighbors and there's bad regular neighbors. There's sometimes good renters, sometimes not so great renters. So we're finding that balance. But what we have learned through this is we've got a lot more outdoor eating. We've expanded some of those areas where there was going to be those temporary parklets. People have really invested in making some outdoor space look good and be enjoyable as long as we can weather-wise. That was Roadrunner, by the way, one of my favorite spots. This is the 111 corridor, and obviously that Jefferson, Washington to Jefferson, that 2-mile stretch is really 78% of our sales tax comes from that area. So when you look at how retail changes, how people buying cars change, the grab and go, the online shopping, we've got to look at how do those big box stores still survive if things are different in the future of your retailtainment or your experiential shopping. So we're trying to activate this with different landscaping, traffic flow, signage, entry point monuments, and then working with each of those center owners, because right now there's 11 or 12 different specific plans with each of those shopping centers. We're trying to make a universal code plan and allow a form-based code, allow some flexibility on what people want to do. We want to get rid of a lot of the asphalt that's in the parking and figure out how to do things in that and activate those things, not all the time, but maybe on certain occasions, like we had the brew in LQ there a couple of years ago. We want to return that up there. So when the stores are closed, you have something else at night that people can enjoy. And just to get people around a little bit more, this is also right in front of our CD Link. So the CD Link is the south part of the levee on the wash. So it's not impacting golf courses or residences. It's really all that commercial. So how do we connect the CD Link points into those commercial shopping centers for shopping, for dining, for rest areas, et cetera. So that's pretty exciting for us. That's going to be probably another 3 to 5 year plan. And we're looking at mixed use. We bought the Menino property, the infamous property between the 2 corporate center drives. So it's that would be between like the back of the high school, offices where all the physicians are, and then over by where Lightstream was, and Osborne Rincon, and some of the other physician on the post office. Those 2, that land in between, we finally purchased after about 20 years of attempts, and that will be mixed use. So we'll have some affordable housing there. We'll have some mixed use there, and that's kind of part of that live, work, play, because we do have requirements by the state for a certain number of affordable housing units. We have about 1,500 to 1,700 now. And the state's telling us we need another 1,500. And when you look around La Quinta, there's not a lot of places to put them. And they mandate that you have to put them close to schools, close to shopping, close to public transportation. And that doesn't leave a lot of space to do that. So we also did purchase
communities like Watercolor.
Yeah, we have Watercolor, Seasons, the Hadley Villas apartments, Vista Dunes, Wolf Waters, all of those are affordable housing. They don't look affordable. One of the areas that we did acquire in this past year is the Dune Palm Mobile Home Estate. So right across from the high school, it's horrible. That will be a future plan to do something different with and give those people a better place to live. The challenge is we have to relocate them and fund that relocation while something new is being developed. And there's not a lot of options from an affordable standpoint to move that many residents. And so the goal is with the Menino property, if we can build some affordable housing, we can put them there while we do something else with the Dune Palms Mobile Home Park. So we do have a plan. All right, upcoming events, and then we'll do questions. Again, I talked about the spring update. Similar to this, we're going to cover a few other areas. We'll cover some of the areas of the workshop where people said, we need more free concerts. So this will be followed by a free concert. But there's a lot of other things that came up there, either road plans, road complaints, park things, trees, things like that. The other deal is our big 40th birthday party. So this is another free event. And we often have had realtor groups there that set up booths there and hand out stuff and or have something for the kids. But this is just an opportunity for the community to get together. And we'll always have police and fire there. Our CERT teams are out there, councils out there. Some groups perform, those kids groups perform from schools. And it's 9 to 12 and Rotary does hot dogs, there's muffins, we sing happy birthday, and we have a good time. And it'll be at Civic Center Park where the art celebration is. And then if you haven't heard, the skate park is open. It's really cool. We still need to do landscaping around it, some shade structures, add benches, kind of bring a little bit more of that coziness there, but the park itself is underway. I did hear from somebody over the weekend that there must have been this massive accident. There was an ambulance on duty, people were colliding, it was overcrowded. I did find out it was a single biker, about a 19-year-old. He was going in the bowl. He ended up, when he got to the top, kind of fell back onto his back. He had a helmet on, they have to sign a waiver, and he was taken to the hospital, but he was released and okayed. And the management company, when we said, we kind of need to know about those things. So when we hear it from a resident saying, hey, what was going on? We know in advance, kind of like our police reports that we get. And so they said, just plan on there'll be about an ambulance a month, just because this is still is a high risk sport. And of course, my hospital hat's going, oh, this is kind of good for business. No, just kidding. Just kidding. It's a high risk sport. You're on a bunch of concrete, people practice. But even Tony Hawk broke his femur, but not at La Quinta.
On YouTube, they made it sound like it was the end of the world was coming because somebody got hurt at this park. Just, yes.
Yeah.
They were going nuts over it.
Yeah. They do monitor the occupancy. We already realized we've got to get kind of a lighted crosswalk that goes across from the high school parking lot because parking is, it's pocket right now. And until people get in there and play and experience it, I think it'll tone down a little bit. But anyway, it's a great addition to the North La Quinta area. And again, that's right on Dune Palms. That'll be right along the last bridge that we have to build for the north-south. Right behind that is where the dilapidated mobile home park is that we need to improve. And then there's other land there that will do affordable housing and mixed use. And that all connects to that whole CV link, Highway 111 corridor, and kind of activates the whole north-south and east-west. So that's pretty cool.
Dumb question. There's a skate park across the street, the big park. There's a couple of little poles. Is that going to be changed to something else?
Yes, we are seeking input right now from skaters and community of what do we want to do with that? Do we want to put pickleball there? Want to put sand volleyball courts there? Do we want to do whatever? And people are bringing a lot of ideas for it. Yeah, we will not have that as a skate park since we do still have one at Fritz Burns Park, which is more on the cove. There's a small one there, which the kids like that live right there. It's easy to access. But that small one that's at the La Quinta Community Park.
Those two are so close, it's kind of redundant.
Yeah. No, and the goal was to keep that open until the big one happened
Sure.
and then repurpose.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, question.
I read something where on Jefferson 111, right there, there's a empty lot over there. They were gonna build some kind of golf indoor thing.
So that's the Next Links project. And the Next Links project is proposed to be actually, if you're at Bevmo and the soup plant, what was the soup plantation, it's going to become a steak barbecue thing soon, I think. That empty lot that's really just west of Residence Inn, the new hotel that opened up about a year now. That's where the Next Links is proposed, the indoor golf. It's like a Top Golf elevated and elevated from like a IT standpoint and experience standpoint, but it's all indoors. We needed to it would be a ground lease with the city is what they're proposing. And they're getting ready to present to us their whole financial package of the build. But that any surplus land cities have, you have to, by the state of California, you had to call it housing. Everywhere there was a strip of land, you had to say housing. So unless you acquired other land, you couldn't swap that out for economic. So until we acquired this other Menino property where we can build affordable housing, then we're able to utilize some of the acres for this for potentially a Next Links or something else. So anywhere we want to put like a container project or some other storefront of some sort, if it's our land, we would have to have a like amount of acreage that would not take away from the surplus housing land that the California state mandates you to have. Whether or not you have anybody that can afford to build, you still have to designate it as that. Yes.
What's going in at Jefferson and 111, kind of across from east of Costco?
Yeah, so that's all Indio. So as soon as you leave that
That's Indio?
driveway of Costco, that's where the La Quinta border stops.
I didn't know.
Until you get to the homes, and that's where it starts again. So they're proposing affordable housing complex there, as well as some commercial, retail commercial. I think EOS Gym is supposed to be going there and a few other places. So we're working with them on throughput and easements, because they're gonna need to have access beyond what we have there, and utilize like the Costco parking to kind of get through to their area. So yeah, they're actively working on that project now. It originally was owned by the Chinese, and that went awry, and a new developer came in and finally started activating that. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. Other questions? Yes.
At one point in time, there was conversation behind the auto park, that land that's owned by the city, to put in an outdoor walk park community in there.
Behind our auto park,
Yeah.
behind 111, the
Yes.
auto dealers.
Yes. But at one point down.
Like adjacent to Walmart?
So we don't own any land over there anymore. There was a big development plan. There was a J.C. Penney's planned on Adams, right behind the Kia. Then that was bought off by, remember the guy, Saxony?
Oh, yeah.
So he acquired that for a short time and wanted, that was about the same time he bought the Sam's Club and wanted to turn it
Yeah.
into something. He bought that 22 acres. That has since sold again. So they have a plan, the Shop Off, I think is the owner now, Shop Off Development. They had a plan for residential, kind of condo apartments there, and then possibly a limited service hotel, because there's supposed to be some type of hospitality in there. There's no activity happening at that point in that piece of property right now. Yeah, and I'm trying to think of other stuff behind the auto dealership. I think that kind of takes the bulk of it, and then you've got Walmart there. Yeah, it's, going back to Jefferson and 111, since you brought up the next links, those roads are atrocious, and, the east side is owned by Indio and the west side is owned by La Quinta. So there is a plan to not only do that intersection in terms of the asphalt grind and grade and redo, but actually between now and probably the end of the year, from 50th all the way to the freeway, not only will the intersection be fixed, but the whole roads, both sides, we're coordinating with Indio on that, the whole road will be resurfaced from 50th to, and that'll probably start in the summer, might take through the end of the year early, because we want to take breaks based on activities. So one of the things that we look at is we spend usually $1 million a year in our payment management plan. So we're always kind of working on roads, then we up that to $1.5 million. We're having a discussion tonight for next year's capital improvement plans. And we're thinking we need to allocate even more, because we're getting to be 40 years old now, and we're seeing a little bit more wear and tear, a lot more activity. And we just really want to try to maintain that high level of road structure without potholes and cracks and things like that, for road safety. So we'll probably be investing a little bit more in our payment management. Asphalt's not exciting, but it is when people are driving on it and they don't feel good about it. Yes.
I've seen some signs around that say you're on camera, or there's surveillance camera. What's happened with, we came to, there are more cameras on?
Sure. So we put in, and those signs usually you're going to find as you enter into the city from kind of another location, cameras in use. And we do have cameras. They're police safety cameras that have multiple blackouts. In fact, they don't even read license plates at this point, definitely are reading people, or they're not, yeah, there's a lot of blackout components. It's really traffic driven, but we've done that phase now, and that's a notification process for people as they're entering the city that those things are there. They've really become a huge benefit, not only like during Ironman, during the tennis tournament. We're having a debrief tonight at council to talk about how it's helped or hurt during the tennis tournament, where normally our guys would have to literally be out there in those boxes on the side of the road and adjusting things. Red lights, you can do that now from like a traffic control center at City Hall. So if you're seeing a backup, it's like, how do you redirect so you can get that traffic moving a little bit more? One of the things that came up in the workshop is looking at phase 2 of that public safety surveillance. So do you do them at parks or at trailheads, some of the other areas, without keeping them in residential areas that are still maybe high volume problems? We've caught a lot of repeat graffiti people, gangs. We've caught shoplifters as a result of patterns when they keep going into the store, because most of that shoplifting happens on 111, Walmart, Kohl's, grocery stores, things like that, Home Depot. And it's helped on some of the random accidents that have occurred. There was a time where a driver hit a pedestrian. And unfortunately, fortunately, the pedestrian lived. We thought the pedestrian didn't make it, but the pedestrian lived. But the reality is the person driving was not drunk. And if you look at the surveillance, the way it was done, the man literally was waiting for a car. He was committing suicide. He literally waited for a car to come out and went out in front of it intentionally. And the driver had nowhere to go. Felt so bad. He was just so distraught.
Wow.
So it's been an aid to our police enforcement if they can't be everywhere all the time, even though we're spending $18 million a year on police services. And we have a lot of coverage. They can't be everywhere all the time. So these public safety cameras have really, really helped. We're working on potentially adding a license plate reader for that 111 corridor. Indio has it and Indian Wells has it. So if they've got somebody that's kind of a chase and they continue on, at least we can identify it. But sometimes right now it's a white sedan and we don't really know the details of that. So we need a little bit more information to keep catching the bad guys. Yeah, quicker. Yes,
What are they putting in where the old Steinmart was?
that's a good question. So we're speculating. We've heard rumors it's going to be one of the Amazon grocery stores. One of the, same one that they're doing in Rancho Mirage's old Steinmart. But they're not admitting to it, even though there's a lot of construction to prepare it going on. They say they have a leaseholder, but they're not disclosing who it is. Yes, yes.
Because there are no signs.
No, a lot of activity, definitely a lot of activity. Yes, yes. Let's see, other things, other lots that are potentially in process. I think one of the home developments was right adjacent to the church, St. Francis of Assisi. It's been a myriad of different plans and with some tweaks. And so those are still like a single family home kind of model, smaller versions. And they're contemplating rental, but Laguna de la Paz is already saying we don't want that, even though it's on the other side of the wall with a buffer. It's like, put them where I don't live, but then don't even put them close to where I live. So there's always, you can't please everybody. We learn that. We try our best and we have to get all the input and make the decision. So that's a pending project. The half-built building that was going to be the California Desert Art Museum that has since sold to Dr. William Kelly. He's a radiologist, interventional radiologist that had health scan imaging and CTs and MRs. So he's going to be converting that to an imaging center. He also owns the building that's in front of Louise's Pantry, where there's a ear, nose, throat physician. And I think I think Keller Williams was there for a while. He owns that building as well. So he's kind of switched out of a lot of clinical practice more into the real estate investment. So hopefully we'll see some continuity there instead of the bricks. Yeah. Other things. Yes.
The last question, you mentioned about the short-term rentals. Any thoughts on this petition?
Oh, and I didn't talk about, thank you very much. I didn't talk about the Citizens Initiative. There's a group of citizens that had initially came to council in November and said that they wanted to ban short-term rentals forever, except in the home share areas. Home shares are where you're renting a casita or a room and you're physically still at home when the renter's there. Those they want, there's only about 22 of them. But those they want to allow because some of the people that are against short-term rentals actually have home share permits. So they're picking and choosing, but nonetheless, that's good. It's a little bit more on-site policing, right? Is their perspective. So they started to get their signatures back in November, but they did not meet there's certain deadlines you have to meet on marketing or advertising or reporting. And they didn't do that. So they withdrew that and then they tweaked it a little bit and then they resubmitted it in February. So they're in their 180-day window. You're required to get 10% of the registered voters in La Quinta, which is about 2,200-ish. And once those qualify, they have until July 26th to qualify those. My understanding is they're supposed to be presenting that to our city clerk to go with register our voters sometime this month. It will be on the ballot in November. And if it passes, short-term vacation rentals in those non-exempt areas will be banned as of January 1st of 2025. And there's nothing that we can do about it. So again, it's $7 million of revenue that comes to our city from those areas. I'm fine with as those numbers maybe decrease and that density continues to decline as long as we can compensate that with some of the newer development areas that are planned. So there is a balance. It's a third of our police budget, and that's a lot of money over the years. That's hard to make up when police and fire infrastructure costs continue to rise. So I'm opposed to that, but I'm not able to, actively campaign. There's nothing to campaign with yet anyway, but anytime in public meetings, I've always said there needs to find a balance. We want to preserve the quality of life and still allow people the opportunity to do what they want to do. So we're at about the signature phase time. what our goal is, and that's why if you go to the website, you'll have all the information that I shared here and more. We're trying to put the facts out because there's a lot of information that's not factual, like we're continuing the proliferation of permit issuance when there hasn't been a permit issue since August of 2020, except in the areas that are allowed, and they're not bothered with the areas that are allowed. So we're trying to show that the complaints have gone down, the density has gone down, and it's still a viable program, and not be swayed by misinformation that's out there. There's a lot of it. Yes.
So the grandfather in STRs will go away in 2025.
Yes.
And how many is that?
Right now, 1,065.
And then I asked a question, I don't know whether you're going to get to those or not, but regarding monthly rentals. So right now, we're not able to do a monthly rental in the city of Quinta for any property for 6 months out of the year because they require 31-day minimum stays. So anything with 30 or 28 days, we're not able to rent for that month. Is there
We
any
use-
consideration being made to change that to the days of the month as opposed to a 31-day minimum?
That comes up all the time. So we utilize the definition of short-term rentals that the state of California has, which just says 30 days or less. So if you're renting for 31 days or more, and they're staying for 28 because it's February, or 30 because it's March, or if I do my little numbers, I'm not gonna say that's okay, because it's obviously less than 30 days, but we don't require permits for long-term rentals at all. So if that's 31 days and beyond, and there's continuity there, I don't know if we'll change the definition based on the state of California's law.
So I work with a rental agency that handles all both short-term and long-term for my clients. They were advised that they had to change it from 30 to 31 days. Their business dropped in half. Just because you can't rent for 6 months out of the year. When people go and look for rentals, they look from
January 1st to June 30th.
month.
Yeah.
So if they went April 1st to April 30th, nothing comes up because it has to be 31 days.
So that I will explore, because in our feeling is that's still a month rental, and that's considered long-term, even though it's there, you know, it's a technical piece, because we've had that happen with folks for November, for February, for example. I'll look into that, especially as this ballot initiative has legs and it potentially is going to be on the ballot. That would be an area that we could, if we could make modifications before anything like that passed, to provide the flexibility of a true days of the month, because that still is long-term. You know, the concern is the people every weekend, and that seems to be the angst for some of the local neighbors, is the more constant turnover versus people that are there a month or 2 months, or the Canadians are, you know, to 6 months. So I will definitely ask that as a follow-up.
Yeah, I agree, because in real estate, it's 30 days for rentals or longer, right? Even our contracts, we use a different contract for 30 days or longer. 29 days or less, we have the vacation rental agreement. So, and then escrow, when you're prorating rent calculations, it's based on 30 days
or more.
30-day months, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So,
Well, the other challenge we have, our two biggest months for rental here are February and March. February is a 28-day month, or 29 days in certain years.
March is 31 yet.
When I talked to them about this, and well, we were told, well, just let people go ahead and rent for the 31 days and then they can stay shorter. But if the people who are searching for a property, they're gonna look, and if it's only for 31 days, I made me think, because I was looking for a property that I knew I sold a client. I said, why isn't this coming up? Well, it was because it was April's 30 days.
Right.
I went April 1st to April 30th. Then I went April 1st to March for May 1st.
And it was.
You have to go to May 2nd in order for it to come up, because that's
Because you need
31 days.
Okay.
So we're
right.
losing a lot of revenue within the city because people aren't coming. We had a great season this season. But
Yes.
I'm just worried about ongoing, what effect is the banning of all these short-term rentals going to have on our sales tax, our revenues. There's not enough hotels for all these people.
Especially, exactly. That's the other good point when you talk about the effect and the impact. One of the things that the council is allowed to do, which we did a couple meetings ago, is issue direction to council or to staff to seek an RFP to find a company that will do an economic impact report. And that'll be done in another 30 or 60 days, I guess. And it will show without the short-term rentals, what will happen, not only to our own revenue from a city standpoint, but what does that mean for all the businesses that it impacts? What does it mean for the local restaurants, the stores, the housekeepers, the pool cleaners, the property management folks, all of the individuals that are creating jobs as a result of managing these properties, because so many of the properties are much better maintained than people who live there year round. And it's really assisted, I think, the value of our homes and the desirability of people wanting to come to the area. So that will be another key point as we roll out facts of a third-party entity that comes in and looks at the impact and or without that revenue, what is that equivalent to in terms of the cost of doing business in the city of La Quinta? Will that affect our pavement management? Will it affect our police services? Will it affect our fire stations? And looking at that information. It's more factual information to share with people as we're trying to educate. We can't campaign once this thing, if it passes, we can educate, but we can't literally tell you how to vote. We can only lay out the facts like we did on Measure G. We're, viable city, good finances, good savings, but in the course of 10 years, this is how much short we're going to be getting for services if we don't have a little bit more coming to the coffer. And I don't want to turn around and say no to short-term vacation rentals and have to do something with taxes, because I'm not a pro increased tax person. We pay enough in California. So these folks that are paying TOT are the ones coming to visit us that are spending money everywhere else, and they're creating jobs, and they're increasing the value. So that economic impact report will also be critical to that piece. Yeah.
Is there any coordination between the other cities around the short-term issue? Because everybody seems to be doing it differently between Palm Desert, Palm Springs, et cetera.
Right.
So we start to have a kind of cohesive look from a Coachella Valley point of view.
Well, it's hard to have some cohesiveness when some cities have just outright banned them.
Right.
Because they didn't want to deal with it, or they got tired of hearing from residents, or maybe they just didn't want to make the investment. We have learned from Palm Springs on some of the things that they're doing. They still have a lot more than we do, clearly. We've shared all of our ordinance information and our plan and our companies that we use with Desert Hot Springs, because as cities have been banning and there's no place else, they're going to Indio, a little bit Coachella, mostly Indio, and then they're heading up to Desert Hot Springs. So they're both now experiencing some of the same things we went through, with a higher peak of volume and maybe not enough code enforcement to management. So we made the investments with other staff members and security to help manage those. So we're trying to share what we've learned on helpful management, fee studies, things like that. Because again, those cities that are still embracing it, we want to make sure that there's still opportunities, because not everybody wants to stay in a hotel. Like you said, there's not enough hotel rooms per se everywhere where people want those choices. There's plenty of options, and there's Mayor Middleton reported last week that there's some 5,000 hotel rooms collectively in Palm Springs. We clearly don't have that. We've got a Residence Inn, which is fairly new, the Embassy Suites, the La Quinta Resort, and the little bed and breakfast, Lake Chateau, the Lake La Quinta. And hopefully again, we'll be having the Montage and Pendry down the road, that'll add some. But we're not a Palm Desert or a Rancho Mirage that have these giant resorts with hundreds and hundreds of rooms. So there needs to be that balance, because some people want to get away from that and experience what our culture is versus staying in a box room with family. They want to get together with family. So we try to coordinate and communicate, but we've always been that city that wants to try to figure out a way to make it work, because we see the pros and cons, and we've just got to try to find a middle ground. Okay, thank you.
I think there's a couple chat
Oh, good.
questions here.
Okay, PJ West, CCNRs allow but is excluded from permits. Yeah, because of the ban and the moratorium lands that was put in place during COVID, and it will extend indefinitely unless council decides to open up for new permits. So even in the CCNR areas, unfortunately, because of the mass kind of protest, we wanted to make sure that we didn't lose all of them. And even as a result of us making changes, managing things better, decreasing the complaints, the citizens initiative still came forward, which is really disappointing, because we felt like we really heard them. We'll pull the ad hoc committee together and work towards what they were looking for as far as solutions, in addition to finding new developments that could have those rentals, so they're not necessarily in those other areas. So yes, so anybody that's grandfathered in can still be there, but we are not issuing new ones unless it's the signature. I keep getting disconnected, sorry. Any new developments for pickleball courts? Oh, So what I've learned about, I haven't played, I'm too busy, but I'd like to at some point, you know, it's definitely a thing. And Fritz Burns, our old park there that we've converted a few tennis courts to pickleball courts, is quite the attraction, right? And I've learned that people come from other places like Freedom Park and some of the, even the country clubs that have very nice pickleball courts, because the level of competition and skill level is so variable at Fritz Burns, because it's got just a great draw, that it's more fun to play, I guess, against those folks. So there's, you know, we try to work with Desert Recreation District, because the park that is right around our museum, across the street from Stuffed Pizza, that's actually a county park where the baseball field is, and we hold the car show. We've asked them to please put pickleball courts in, and they don't want to do it. We're looking at the former skate park that's at the La Quinta Community Park. We'll be enhancing that water splash pad too there, because that's kind of old and outdated. That's a possibility, because we're trying to do a remodel of that Fritz Burns, and how do we, that little park gets used so much and parking's limited, and just more and more people are flocking there. Our yard needs some work, our maintenance yard needs some work there. So what we really need to do is possibly look at collaborating with some of these country clubs like PJ West and Andalusia and Rancho La Quinta that have them, and perhaps have utilization, some type of court sharing, not all the time, but on certain weekends maybe, so that the community that is really flocking to Fritz Burns can experience some of the other courts, just spread it out a little bit, but it's definitely a demand.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that covered it. Any other questions? Yeah. Yes, Gary.
Is there any consideration for any new golf courses that the city would own?
The city would own, no. No. No.
Is there any consideration to do an agreement with maybe a golf course that's owned by somebody else to allow residents to play, such as the old Trilogy up Quinta? Because it's almost impossible to get it to touch as a resident. I have homes in Indian Wells and Quinta, fortunately. I can pretty much always get something in Indian Wells at the resort. I can never get anything that's over.
Really? There's still about a third of the rounds are dedicated to residents, and that's kind of our threshold at a minimum. But we have this resurgence of golf has been incredible, which is great. I always think that it should only be like 9 holes, because I kind of get bored after about. I don't play very often, but it's like, okay, we still have a whole bunch more to do? I can be doing all these things at home. And,
You don't fish, do you?
I don't. What's that?
You don't fish, do you?
Yeah, I won't know. My husband says I've got 2 gears, 5th gear and a sleep. So that's like I don't go to the movies. He's like, I'm not gonna spend money to put you in a dark room, make you not talk for 2 hours and let you recline. You're gonna fall asleep, which I do every single time. So yeah.
Maybe if you weren't out hiking at 5 in the morning.
Yes.
Trilogies have their share of problems.
They have had their share.
Maybe there is an agreement that could be made that could assist with homeowners.
And there was talk about 2 general managers ago at the La Quinta Resort on how do we do kind of a cue card and utilize when it was on less play, to how do we open a certain amount of rounds up so that residents can have access to that, where normally it would be members only. But things change there. They do have new ownership, and they are making good investments there. So that's definitely something to reckon. We don't want to own any more golf courses. We want to look forward to transitioning that one with the parameters and the covenants in place. But really, that under redevelopment was a mechanism like Indian Wells did, or like Desert Willow. It's a means to have an amenity there, build your infrastructure, and then attract a hotel to the destination that you can ultimately get your revenues from, right? It just has taken La Quinta a lot longer. So, I mean, it's a great golf course and people love it, but the rounds have been off the charts. It's really been super, even with all the construction going on. Yeah. Yes.
How about 58 and Madison, about the Wake Park? Are they gonna continue with that project?
So the Wave Park status right now is that it went to Planning Commission, a public hearing at Planning Commission, to adopt the draft EIR to a permanent EIR, so that process could continue. They spent from, I don't know, 6 or 7 at night until midnight or 1 in the morning. So they continue that public hearing. I believe it's coming back a week from today to Planning Commission. Should Planning Commission make the recommendation or make any changes, until they make a recommendation to come forward to council, it hasn't been before us. So right now the status is, it's not an approved project at this point. Until council approves it, if it comes to council. Yeah, it's one of those ones that I can't really talk about say my opinion per se, at all, because I want to be able, if it ever comes, be able to have some input there, because otherwise, yeah. But, yeah, it's, yeah. How do you really feel? Yeah, so what else? Ironman has been continuing for a couple more years. Of course, I mentioned the art celebration is 2 times a year now. Golf will continue with American Express. I happen to serve on the Phil Mickelson Foundation Board, which now is going to be called Friends for Golf. We filed for a new name change. Of course, Phil won't be our host or ambassador anymore, but that board and adding some local board members to ensure those monies go to charities, that will continue. So it's actually American Express has signed another long-term contract with the PGA Tour to continue at PGA West and keep that on Quinta every year. So it's just, the goal is it gets bigger and better. We just have to figure out how to manage the parking and the concerts and all
You
that
did a
stuff.
great job this year.
A lot less people, but it was a good
Right out of there.
retry of the massive, I call that success in kind of a, oh no, kind of way, but you'll learn from it. Yes.
Well, LPGA, since now Rancho Mirage is not gonna be holding it, it's La Quinta, do you think it will be a good approach for
Well,
Quinta?
My understanding is Chevron's moving that to Texas.
Texas, yeah.
Yes. So whether there has been talk amongst some of the PGA Tour folks, at least when they come to visit during the tournament, that maybe a seniors tour out here would be a nice addition since the women's will be leaving. So I don't know. We would welcome it.
Hey, women senior.
Women senior. You're not a senior. Well, thank you very much. Gina and Mark have my last week of the Women Council Realtors, every mayor got about 15 or 20 minutes, and I didn't just stay for all of them, but when we do those, it's really great to see. Just, we're all different in different ways, the lifestyles or activities, but there's a lot happening in all of our cities, and it's really great to see just with the arena coming on board. I mean, this little valley has got some major wealth and depth and attraction, and it's just really kind of cool to be part of it. So thank you for all the work that you all do, because you are our ambassadors valley-wide with wanting to choose to live here and work here or work remote here, and that's a really important connection, because oftentimes you're that first point before we even see them at the grocery store or the gas station or what have you. So thank you. Thank you very much.
And thank you for everything you do.
You're welcome.
We appreciate it.
And that presentation, feel free. There's nothing confidential on there. That a lot of that again is on the website. That's a moment